Hello chess lovers, welcome to the new video from Chess Hoodie. So today we will continue our coverage of Prague International Chess Festival Masters. We will be looking at the game between David Navara from Czech Republic and Sam Shankland from United States. So let's dive right in. It was an English opening, c4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6. So pretty standard moves for English opening. And we have g3 and d5. So Shankland reacts in the center immediately. It's an approved approach, so why not follow it? An exchange followed up, cd5, knight takes d5, bishop g2, bishop c5, castles kingside. And even though this is called an English opening, this variation is actually an exact position from the Sicilian defense with colors reversed, and with white having an extra tempo. And that's why I was surprised that he didn't go for a typical strike, and that is 95, 95, and then d4, one possible variation where the position is equal, but white has really easy play here. He will, of course, recapture the piece because of this double attack. In whatever black does, the material equality will be restored, and the position for white would be nice, since black can play this kind of tactic with colors reversed with the tempo down. So that means that if you can play it with the tempo down, you should be able to play it with one more tempo. But David Navara didn't want to do this, so he played e3, and now Shankland said, no, after rook e8, the rook is controlling the e5 pawn, defending it, sorry. So that kind of strike that I mentioned on the previous move is no longer possible, because after knight e5, black can recapture with his rook, which leaves two pieces controlling the d4 square and makes that move impossible. Of course, Navara didn't play that, but instead he chose bishop g5. A little bit of a provocation move. He wants to provoke f6, but is it really beneficial to white to do that? Not really sure, because um, black usually wants to establish a pawn chain like this to give additional security to his position. So knight c3 was included, and after bc3 the mentioned f6 happened, and now the g5 bishop has to retreat. It retreated all the way back. So has it achieved something? Yes and no. It did force black to move his f pawn, but is it really a weakness or is it a strength, because it now supports the e5 spot? Hard to tell, but in my opinion it's beneficial for black to have a pawn on f6 in most cases. So black developed his bishop, covered oops, sorry, not that, this diagonal, which is a good combination. You have pawns covering the dark squares and bishop covering the light squares. And here bishop b2 followed, and honestly it's not a bad move, but I don't like it. There is a classical plan here that starts with queen c2, then you transfer this knight to the queen side, and you start to play on the queen side using the fact that you have this beautiful bishop and that you have pawns that controls a nice group of squares in the center. But okay, that didn't happen. Bishop b2 followed, and we have a retreating move, bishop f8, and the purpose of this move is just to evacuate the bishop from c5, and that's like a preemptive measure against any kind of d4, so it doesn't come with a gain of tempo. White continued with bishop c2. Now a good move by Shankland, bishop d7, um, planning some kind of transfer like this, from where the queen will, together with the bishop, exert some pressure. Also, now the rooks have been connected. Rook fd1, queen f7, as mentioned, and at this point, the a2 pawn is not really hanging. Now, for example, knight d2, if you capture this pawn, you might regret it because white can actually capture this, not capture immediately, but trap this bishop after bishop c6, bc6, c4. The connection between the queen and the bishop um, has been cut. So actually with his next move, white can capture the bishop. So you don't do that. You don't threaten yet to capture on a2 as black, but it's something to keep in mind. It might become possible in the future. White chose e4. Is it a good move? It's not a bad move, but again, it's against the traditional plans which are proven to work in this position. Because once you play your pawn from e2 to e4, you did a certain disservice to your g2 bishop. And now it becomes obvious what your plan is. Your plan is now, it has to be either d4 or f4, since you blocked your light square bishop. So other ways of playing would include not touching the e2 pawn, so that you can utilize this bishop on this diagonal. But e4 happened, and we have knight a5, so black is starting to stir up some play on the queen side, and he has in mind moving the c pawn in the future. Knight d2, rook a d8, rook takes a nice central position, and white succeeds in pushing d4. Even though he managed to do it, he didn't achieve that much. Yeah, he has nice pawns, but really, how will you follow up? Not clear, not clear. Just to mention, black still cannot capture, this time because of the same idea, so cutting connection between the queen and the bishop, but now on a different square. If you remember, in one of the previous variations, we did that on the c4 square by pushing this pawn, and now we did it on the d5 square, but by pushing the d pawn. Okay, let's go back. Black, of course, didn't capture on a2, and that would mean that he would lose a game, but he didn't do it. So he played c6, controlling this pawn, so it's harder for it to go forward. And now a white stroke with another pawn thrust, and he's now having a lot of control in the center, but again, it's not so clear how he will proceed. And here, black employs a wonderful strategical or tactical maneuver to achieve strategical goal. ef4, gf4, f5. And after e5, we can see what happened. What happened is that white positioned a lot of his pawns on the dark squares, and that made the b2 bishop very limited in scope. On the other hand, uh, black's pieces control light squares very successfully. Let me put a different color so that you can see. And also this pawn, it's controlling light squares. So black established a sort of a light square blockade and also made the b2 bishop a little bit dumb. And here a good plan would be bishop e7, then moving this king to h8 to allow the rook to transfer to g8, and then start some kind of a kingside attack with g5. But black didn't go for that. He instead played c5, which I personally don't like, because while the pawn was on c6, it was supporting that light square blockade. Now it does achieve some other purposes, but it abandons the first purpose that it was doing. and in return, white reacts with an inaccuracy. So he goes knight f3, and he misses the point completely, because even though he's a top grandmaster, but uh, by analyzing the game, we can see that the right move was knight f1 to position the knight to a square, which might help white get some influence over the light squares and break possibly that light square blockade in the future, only thanks to the fact that the pawn moved from c6 to c5. So that's why this kind of idea became available, but white failed to capitalize on it and went on f3, and this move, it just doesn't have any future. So you're not supporting your main goal here, and that is to break the light square blockade of blacks. Now bishop e7, controlling the g5 square. You don't want to allow knight g5 hitting the queen and bishop. King h1, king went to safer square, and now black starts to invade. Knight c4, queen e2, and queen h5. The invasion continues. From h5, the queen exerts pressure on the f3 knight, and also if we make this diagonal a little bit longer, there is a pin along that same diagonal, which will play a key role in the future. a4, knight b6, so knight is retreating for now and gives extra control to the d5 square to allow these kind of maneuvers more possible. And once the bishop gets to d5, it will be really scary for white. dc5 happened, not the best move, honestly. It just activates black bishop, and now this bishop is positioned nicely. And also, it doesn't need to watch the g5 square anymore, because any kind of attempt like that would be futile. And now white made a mistake. He played queen b5, trying for some active play, but he did it the wrong way. Probably a5 was giving him better chances. After queen b5, his position will soon collapse, because he abandoned this square, the control of that square, which allowed black to take advantage of it, put the bishop there, and exert pressure here, while also looking at this square, which might prove useful in the future. One exchange of rooks happened, rook d8, rook d8, a5, knight goes back into white's territory, and now we have a6. So white is trying to mud the waters, but he really cannot do it successfully, which can be shown by playing a move like b6, where all the stirring up that white is trying to do would be completely stopped. But Shankland didn't do that. He was imprecise here. He took, but even with this imprecise move, he still has a winning position actually, because of this bad bishop on b2, and also the g2 bishop is not much better. And once the e6 bishop comes to this diagonal, it will be probably the end. So queen a6 happened, tactical threats attacking the piece, but the piece that was attacked escapes the attack and gets to its dream square, and now actually the f3 knight is hanging, and you can't really move it, because any movement of that knight would result in exchange of light square bishops, which would um, terminally weaken white's king. So white employed a pin and prevented taking on f3, but also he self-pinned here on this diagonal, which could be exploited with a move like knight d2, uh, ending this pin and making enormous threats against this knight, which cannot move, because there is a rook on d1 which is looked at by the queen. But instead of that move, Shankland chose different one. Same idea, but with a little bit less force, because there is no more triple attack on this knight. There is double attack, but no triple attack. So white tried to mud the waters more, but after king h8, you cannot really take this bishop. If you take it with your bishop, black just takes on f3 and the game is over. Now you are the one that is pinned. So you remember a few moves ago, white pinned black, but now he is the one getting pinned on that same file. So for that reason, he wanted to get rid of his d2 rook, but that doesn't help either. So rook d2, knight d2 followed, and now this piece is threatened. The f3 knight, and there is not really much white can do. He tried queen a5. Yeah, you're attacking the rook, but the rook just moved one square away. It's no longer attacked, and after bishop d2, bishop f3, the game was over. White is an exchange down, and also he has a bishop hanging, and exchange here followed by queen g4 is threatened as well. So don't forget the first rank as well because of this rook. So this is a completely lost position for white. So David Navara resigned and Sam Shankland won this game. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the game. Um, Please comment, share, like, and subscribe if you like the content. And see you again in another video. Bye!